Let's start off with something interesting. So there is a theory that Samantha was kidnapped by the Keepers, which is something that I believe to be true because of this picture. Now in this picture, the Keeper's portal is shown open with a Keeper coming out with its arms reaching forward while Samantha is hiding under her covers. Sounds like kidnapped to me. Now, the Keepers are most likely the Vrilya, and we know this because when you put the golden rod down in the Eisendrache Easter egg, a ghost keeper is summoned, and we know that the golden rod is obviously a Vril device, making us believe that the Keepers are the Vrilya. Now the thing about the Vrilya is that they live in a place called Agartha, which is the center of the earth, a hollow earth. Now, the theory of Samantha being kidnapped by the Keepers completely makes sense, because if the Keepers would kidnap her, they would obviously take her back to their home, which is why Samantha says,
"Free me from Agartha."
But wait, which Samantha did the Keepers kidnap? Because in Origins, the Samantha that we believe is trapped in Agartha is Samantha 2.0 of the Origins universe, but the Samantha that used to live in the Eisendrache room was Samantha 1.0, and we know this because of the little statue of Samantha 1.0 in that same room, and because all the other 1.0 characters used to live in the surrounding rooms. As Nikolai says,
"This is where other Richthofen lived before. Well, before Richthofen put bullet in Richthofen."
So, if Samantha 2.0 is Origins Agartha Samantha, but 1.0 Samantha is the one who was kidnapped to Agartha, which Samantha controls the zombies while we're playing Origins? Maybe that's why there are two completely different zombie eye colors in the same map. Maybe Samantha 2.0 controls the yellow-eyed zombies, and Samantha 1.0 controls the purple-eyed zombies, or the other way around. Now, this is just a theory. Now you might be saying, but Habibi, at the Origins ending cutscene, there is only one Samantha, not two. Well, yeah, that's because that's Samantha's room. That's not Agartha. Now here's the question. How was Samantha kidnapped on Eisendrache if she was already sent to the moon on the Giant, which happened before Eisendrache, meaning that she couldn't have been on Eisendrache to be kidnapped in the first place, because she should have already been on the moon and not Eisendrache? Well, the answer to this is that Samantha was kidnapped before the Giant happened, before she was sent to the moon, and when you arrive at Eisendrache, you just see the drawings of what already happened before you arrive. Just because we weren't on the map Eisendrache doesn't mean that there wasn't stuff going on there while we weren't there. You have to realize that the zombie storyline continues on different maps even when we're not there. A great example is Doris. Remember that there are 3 different Doris events that happened, and our characters weren't even there for all 3. The first event is Richthofen testing on the test subjects, which we never got to really see. Even though our characters were there, there's no video or gameplay on the map of it.
This time, subject N3WP just slightly improved. The Russian subject still smells like urine. I think I might have killed the specimen from Mexico.
The second event that happened on Doris that we never got to witness is when Richthofen originally teleported Samantha to the moon in Universe 1.
Edward, open this door now!
I'm scared.
Stay by me, Samantha.
Goodbye, Dr. Maxis.
And the third event is when the Russians were on Doris and that whole zombie outbreak happened.
But I'm all out of hope. Auf Wiedersehen, my friend. They are coming. I must do what I must do. God forgive us all.
These are all moments on the same map that we never got to actually see, but only hear about through radios. So now that we know that Samantha was kidnapped before the Giant, the proper question to ask is not how was Samantha kidnapped on Eisendrache if she was already sent to the moon, but how was Samantha sent to the moon if she was already kidnapped on Eisendrache? So the question is, where is Samantha? On the moon or in Agartha? Again, the reason Samantha would be on the moon is because Richthofen teleported her to the moon on the Giant, but that wouldn't make sense because Samantha was kidnapped under Eisendrache by the Keepers, which sent her to Agartha. So the question is, where is Samantha? But the problem with this is that both of these Samanthas are the 1.0 Samantha, and there's only one 1.0 Samantha. So the real question is, was Samantha sent to the moon or was she sent to Agartha? The same Samantha can't be in 2 places in one, so where is Samantha? Moon or Agartha? This is where things get weird because Samantha can't be in Agartha because in the Origins Easter egg, we broke the cycle and freed Samantha from Agartha, and if Samantha isn't freed from Agartha, then that means that the characters on Origins Origins didn't complete the Origins Easter egg, meaning that they would still be stuck in Origins cycle, meaning that they would still be on Origins, meaning that they would have never been under Eisendrache in the first place. Again, because they would have been still stuck at Origins, stuck in the cycle. So seems like Samantha being in Agartha is out of the question, which leaves us with the other option, Samantha being on the moon. The thing is, that wouldn't work either, because if Samantha was on the moon, then that would mean when we complete the Eisendrache Easter egg that we are killing Samantha, which is the controller of the zombies. But even after we supposedly kill her, the zombies still keep attacking with yellow eyes, which means that Samantha is still controlling the zombies, which means Samantha can't be on the moon in the MPD. Because if she was dead, then the zombies' eyes wouldn't be yellow. Obviously, she can't control the zombies while she's dead, inferring that she's not dead, again, meaning that she can't be on the moon. That just blew up. So both of our options seem to be crossed out here, but there's one theory that actually fits this situation. What if before Origins under Eisendrache, Samantha was kidnapped by the Keepers, sent to Agartha, freed from Agartha after the characters did the Easter egg, somehow got into Richthofen's hands, then sent off to the moon? That's the only way I could think of Moon and Agartha making sense in the same equation. But even then, it still doesn't completely work, and you'll see why in a second. Now, we have to stop and ask ourselves a question. How many Samanthas are there? There's Samantha 1.0, there's Samantha 2.0 from the Origins universe, then there's a Samantha out there in a different universe that supposedly is playing puppet with the whole zombie storyline through her imagination. Now you might be saying that this house Samantha is the same Samantha as the one in Agartha in Origins, but that doesn't work because this Samantha in the house is with a well and alive Dr. Maxis, and the Maxis on Origins died, meaning that this Samantha has to be in another universe where her dad didn't die. Meaning this is a completely different universe. So there's the house Samantha, there's Samantha 1.0, and there's Samantha 2.0. So is there 3 Samanthas? See, this is where it gets a little strange, because the Samantha under Eisendrache that was kidnapped is Samantha 1.0, again because the statue in her room, and because of course we are in the 1.0 universe. Now this Samantha is taken to the Keeper's home, Agartha, which is where Samantha is on Origins, meaning that the Origin Samantha is also Samantha 1.0, aka the Eisendrache Samantha. Now, there's an interesting radio on the Giant where Maxis says,
She may have been returned to me, but I fear she is not as she was. She has barely said a word. When she did, it was only to cry out for him, to call his name.
Maxis says she has been returned to me, talking about Samantha being freed from Agartha, and he says she keeps calling his name, referring to Eddie. So he's talking about the Samantha that's playing puppet with the zombie storyline, and him saying, although she has returned to me, means that he's talking about the Eisendrache 1.0 Samantha, because the Eisendrache 1.0 Samantha was the one that was taken away from Maxis. As Maxis says, although she has been returned to me. But that doesn't make any sense because Maxis only has 1 daughter. He doesn't have 3 daughters, but it seems like he's referring to all 3 Samanthas. So how does that work?
Alright, so I thought it would be better to give you guys a visual representation, right? So 1.0 means the Universe 1 Samantha, 2.0 is the Universe 2 Samantha, which is like the Origins Agartha Samantha, and H is the House Samantha, which is the one who is obviously playing with the dolls in the house with Edward Richthofen. Technically, we think that these are different Samanthas in one way or another, but it's kind of weird. They're technically the same person, but how are 3 different Samanthas the same person? How is this Samantha, how is 1.0 Samantha the house Samantha? They look completely different. How are they the same person? But you get what I just said though? Like, according to the quotes on the storyline, it kind of seems like that's what it's, you know, trying to infer, right? So here's where the weird part comes in. 1.0 Samantha is the Eisendrache Samantha that got kidnapped, right? She gets kidnapped and taken to Agartha, but wait, I thought that was the 2.0 Samantha that's in Agartha, and those are 2 completely Samanthas from different universes. So it's almost like they transform into the same person whenever 1.0 is transported or teleported to Agartha, and she turns into 2.0 somehow, right? And then, according to the Maxis radio, when Samantha is returned to Maxis, she's in the house calling for his name being Eddie. She's talking about, obviously, you know, the Samantha in the house. So it's like 2.0 Samantha turns into the house Samantha. So it's like this Samantha 1.0 turned into 2.0 turned into House Samantha. So how are they all the same person? You know what I mean? Again, 1.0 Samantha looks nothing like the House Samantha. So how are they the same person?
So just a little side note here. So as we previously thought that the Samantha in the house was like a overruling Samantha in some type of way over the other maps, this shows us that she is not, and she actually fits in the timeline of the other maps. Because in that radio Maxis mentions her alongside the other two Samanthas, which shows us that she's not too different. And she might actually be the other two Samanthas, showing that she's not necessarily playing like God over all the maps and she's not really that special. But again, just a theory. And just to trip you out even more, why is Samantha crying on the giant? Wasn't she just teleported to the moon? Why is there another Samantha on the map? Are there 4 Samanthas? Now, to get to theorizing on how all 3 Samanthas, or technically 4 Samanthas, can be the same person, I have to sidetrack for a little. Again, Agartha is a hollow Earth, and the zombie storyline runs off of the Earth having an Agartha. So, if Der Eisendrache is in Universe 1, and Origins is in Universe 2, why did the Keepers take Samantha to a completely different universe just to put her in Agartha? Couldn't they have put Samantha in the Agartha in the Earth of Universe 1? Every universe has an Earth, meaning every universe has an Agartha, according to this theory that the zombie storyline runs off of. Another question that ties into this is, how did Origins crew get to Universe 1? In other words, how did 2.0 crew get from Origins to the Giant, which is in another universe? Now everyone says, oh, they just teleported. Samantha teleported them at the end of the Easter egg to Dimension 1 on the Giant. But how do we even know that the 2.0 crew was taken to a different dimension when teleporting to the Giant? If you realize, there is no radio or anything that says that we've traveled to a different dimension from Origins to the Giant. It's just an assumption that we've made. Now, we know that we have traveled through time because Origins takes place in 1918 and the Giant takes place in 1945, but we just assume that we have traveled to a different dimension. Now, the reason we assume this is because there is another Richthofen in the Giant's dimension, and the rule is, of the multiverse, if there are 2 Richthofens in one dimension, it doesn't necessarily have to be Richthofen, it could be any of the 4 characters, but just for this example, if there is more than one Richthofen in the same dimension, then one of them has to be out of place. Now, you're saying, Habibi, it's obvious the Origins crew is the one that's out of place, because Origins isn't even in Dimension 1, it's in Dimension 2. Well, we don't even know that. How do we even know that Origins is in another dimension from the Giant? Now you're probably saying, alright Habibi, this is where your theory falls off. Hold on, I'm about to blow your mind. I'm about to connect the dots. So let's say that Origins is actually in Dimension 1. Now again, if Origins is in Dimension 1 and so is the Giant, then one of these Richthofens has to be out of place. Now, we know that Richthofen 1.0 is not out of place because this has been the dimension that he has always been in through the whole Black Ops 1 storyline, which means that Richthofen 2.0 has to be the one out of place. So, where is Richthofen 2.0 from? What universe is he from? Well, remember in my last theory video where I said, is Origins really the first map? Because Richthofen has been to places in other dimensions before Origins. And I was talking about how Origins is not Richthofen's home dimension. Origins is not Richthofen's origins. Well, that lines up perfectly with my theory. According to my last theory, Richthofen was dimension hopping before he got to Origins so he could get the Mob of the Dead blood vials, meaning that he had to leave his home dimension to get the blood vials and come to Origins. Now, something interesting that connects to this is the picture right here. Richthofen is X'd out, but this is the Origins crew, which would mean that this is the Origins Richthofen that is crossed out. But that wouldn't make sense because our Origins Richthofen is fine. He's not dead, so why is he crossed out? Now, just for a second, forget about the theory of Origins being part of Dimension 1. Just for a second. But stick to the theory of Origins not being Richthofen 2.0's home dimension. And every universe having its own Richthofen, according to the multiverse theory, then when Richthofen 2.0 travels to Origins, shouldn't there be 2 Richthofens on this universe now? The one Richthofen that traveled here from his dimension, and the Richthofen that actually belongs to this dimension, right? Alright, now I decided it would be better if I gave you guys a visual representation, right? So, here is our Richthofen of Origins, right? Now, I said that this Richthofen right here, which is the one that we play as in Origins is not his home dimension, right? And this little chart thing that I got going on, not chart, but these timelines that I have going here are are different universes, and like I said, according to the multiverse theory, every universe has its own Richthofen. So Dimension 1 has this Richthofen, which we know is the Dimension 1 Richthofen. Then we got Richthofen's home dimension. Like how I said, Origins is not Origins not Origins Richthofen's home dimension, and there's another Richthofen that belongs there, right? So whenever Richthofen before he goes to Origins, first he goes to Mob of the Dead, which is in between here somewhere, and then he goes to Origins. But when he goes to Origins, there's another Richthofen that belongs to this Origins dimension. Where is he? How come we don't see another Richthofen on the map whenever we play Origins? So where is the other Richthofen when we play Origins? Richthofen 3.0? And notice how I said that only Richthofen 2.0 was out of place from the Origins dimension and not the other characters. It's because Richthofen is the only one who's part of the plan who has to jump from universe to universe to get what he needs for the plan. So Origins is the home dimension for the other three characters, and for the Richthofen that is X'd out, which would technically be our third Richthofen that actually belongs to the Origins dimension. But why is he X'd out? Is he dead? Did someone kill Richthofen 3.0? And proof that this X'd out Richthofen is not a Richthofen we've ever seen before, and it can't be Richthofen 1.0 or Richthofen 2.0, is because Richthofen 2.0 is obviously not dead, because we play as him during Origins, and at this time Richthofen 1.0 wasn't even killed yet by Richthofen 2.0, because the giant takes place years after Origins, and because Richthofen 1.0 getting killed happened in a completely different dimension than Origins. It wouldn't even be relevant to this picture. So again, what happened to Richthofen 3.0? Did he get killed? We haven't even seen him. Or have we? As part of the Origins Easter egg, one of the first steps is to shoot down the Red Baron.
You could say that Manfred von Richthofen began becoming the Red Baron the day he walked into military school.
War in the Sky held for Manfred von Richthofen the promise of everything he valued and longed for.
Richthofen was not a good pilot. Richthofen was an excellent marksman.
In World War I, the man who flew the Red Baron was the Richthofen of the Origins dimension, which is why the Origins Richthofen is crossed out on this picture, because we killed him while doing the Easter egg step of shooting down the Red Baron. Now again, I'm just theorizing, this is all just a theory. Now that theory that I just said was if Origins wasn't part of the 1.0 dimension. Now let's talk about who the crossed out Richthofen would be if Origins is part of the 1.0 dimension, which is the theory that most of this video is about. Now, according to this theory, since Origins is part of the 1.0 universe, then this picture of the Origins crew with the X'd out Richthofen would mean that Richthofen 1.0 is the one who belongs to this picture, because he was killed by 2.0 Richthofen, and since Origins is in the 1.0 universe, and so is Richthofen 1.0, that's why this picture would fit with the Origins 1.0 characters. Now, this is getting really confusing, because whenever I say Origins 1.0 characters, I mean 2.0 characters. Origins has switched to the 1.0 universe, thus me calling them the 1.0s, even though they're technically the 2.0s. Now, Richthofen 1.0 being killed and put with the Origins crew picture supports my theory of Origins and the giant being in the same universe. This would also explain why the Eisendrache Samantha that was kidnapped is the same Origins Samantha. Again, like I asked earlier, why would the Keepers take Samantha to a whole nother universe just to put her in another Agartha? Why couldn't they just put her in the Agartha of their universe, which is just the center of the earth, which every universe has? It's because they didn't. The Keepers didn't take her to a different universe. The Keepers didn't go to a different universe to put Samantha in Agartha. They put Samantha in the Agartha of the 1.0 universe, which is Origins, which is why Samantha from Der Eisendrache is the same Samantha from Origins and Agartha. This lines up perfectly with my theory. Another supporting point to my theory is that at the end of the Origins cutscene, Samantha is holding dolls of the Universe 1 characters, not the Universe 2 characters, showing that Universe 1 is correlated to Origins, and the fact that Universe 2 characters are nowhere to be found in this cutscene, which is just putting more emphasis on Origins and Dimension 1 being connected. Because think about it, Samantha is playing with the dolls, and whenever she plays that little game with her imagination, she's controlling what's happening to those characters, right? And since she's playing with the 1.0 versions of the characters, that means she's controlling what's happening happening to those 1.0 versions of the characters, meaning she's controlling Universe 1. Because if she was controlling Universe 2 and controlling the storyline of Universe 2, then she would be playing with the dolls of the 2.0 characters, but she's not. She's playing with the dolls of the 1.0 characters, showing that the Origins cutscene and Universe 1 are directly connected, according to my theory. And even if Samantha was playing with the 2.0 version of the characters, that would still technically be her controlling the 1.0 universe, because according to my theory, Origins is now part of Universe 1. So playing with the Origins characters means that she's still technically controlling Universe 1. Now, you might be thinking, so Habibi, if Origins is part of the 1.0 universe, that wouldn't make sense, because how are there perk machines on Origins? Because in the 1.0 universe, the perk machines were invented way after 1918, which is when Origins takes place. Well, my answer to that is just like how they sent the giant robots back in time to help them win the war, so did they send the perk machines back in time. And you might be wondering, well, wouldn't the perk machines on Origins be flashing black and white like they do on Mob of the Dead because they're not of that time period? No, because the only reason the perk machines flash black and white on Mob of the Dead is because the perk machines literally are not supposed to be there on the map at all. They do not belong to that time period, and no one ever teleported perk machines back in time to Mob of the Dead. Now, you might be asking, well, isn't Mob of the Dead part of the Origins universe? Well, my answer to that is no, Origins is not in the same universe as Mob of the Dead. Because remember, according to the theory, Richthofen had to travel to a different dimension to get to Mob of the Dead, to get the blood vials, then come to Origins with the blood vials, showing that they are not in the same universe. So technically, the perk machines don't belong in Mob of the Dead at all, because no one brought them back in time to Mob of the Dead, and they were not of that time period at all. The only reason the perk machines are on Mob of the Dead is because Treyarch isn't stupid. They're not about to have a zombies map without any perks, so they literally had to do it for gameplay reasons. And the reason the perks on Origins weren't flashing black and white is because they were brought back in time, and just how the giant robots aren't flashing black and white because they're not of that time period, so are the perk machines not flashing black and white on Origins. Another supporting point to my theory of Origins being in Universe 1 is that on the Giant, the symbols on the teleporters and around the map have changed due to the result of the Germans winning the war, which is why many Templar flags are located around the map, just like the Templar symbol is on the robots in Origins. And if Origins wasn't in the same universe as the Giant, then Origins wouldn't have affected the Giant in that type of way. So it's crazy to me that such a far-fetched theory like this lines up perfectly, except for one point that seems to be off. If our Origins crew is part of the 1.0 universe, then what universe does our original 1.0 characters belong to? Well, I have a theory that the Giant does not take place in the 1.0 universe, and that it takes place in a universe parallel to it, which would make sense because in the 1.0 universe, the Germans didn't win the war, which is why they didn't have the Origins Templar flags all around Der Reese, showing that these are two completely different universes, and it's part of the multiverse, where in one universe the Germans won the war, so that's a different dimension or universe, and in another dimension or universe, the other option happened and the Germans did end up winning the war, showing that these are two completely different universes, but at the same time they are very similar in the same way that Richthofen teleports Samantha to the moon and whatnot. So they are parallel universes. So since the Giant isn't in Universe 1 and Origins and the Giant are now connected according to the theory, that would mean that Origins is also in a universe parallel to Universe 1. So basically, another way I could have worded it, and the simplest way for you to understand it, is that Origins didn't really move to the Universe 1 universe, but Der Eisendrache and the Giant just moved into the Universe 2 of Origins. Does that make more sense? I think that's way better wording than how I said it previously. And more proof that the Giant isn't in Universe 1 because it's a parallel universe to Universe 1 and it has now moved to Universe 2 is that in Der Eisendrache, which is part of the Giants universe, the test subjects are sent to the moon in the year 1945, which is when Der Eisendrache takes place, or at least Dempsey is attempted to be sent to the moon in 1945, but if Dempsey was, then I'm assuming that Group 935 wanted to send all of the test subjects to the moon at this time, wherever they may be, in Pompeii or Russia or wherever. The point is, in the 1.0 universe, the characters were not sent to the moon in 1945, but in the 1990s, as Moon takes place in 1996. This shows that there are clear differences between the universes, showing that they are not in the same universe but are parallel to each other, because they still have a lot of similarities. And more proof that the Eisendrache / Giant universe is a parallel universe to Universe 1 is that in Universe 1, whenever Richthofen was testing on the Mexican test subject, he did not find the key for what he was looking for in the Mexican test subject's spleen, but in the Eisendrache / Giant universe, whenever Richthofen was testing on the Mexican test subject, he did find the key or the answers to what he was looking for in the Mexican test subject's spleen, and that just shows the two different directions that the multiverse took, showing that they are two completely different universes, but they're parallel to each other. So if the Eisendrache universe, which is the same universe as the Giant, isn't the same universe as Universe 1, then that would make sense for our Universe 1 characters to not belong in this dimension, and for this to be our Origins crew's home universe. So how did our original 1.0 characters get to the Giant / Eisendrache universe if it's not even their home universe? Well, there are radios on the Giant that show that the characters other than Richthofen have been dimension hopping themselves, as the radio of Nikolai on the Giant suggests that Nikolai has been universe hopping to kill all the Richthofens that he did.
We may have failed in our mission, but at least there is now one less Richthofen to deal with. If it is any consolation, tell him that the first one is the hardest. I should know. I've killed at least 3 Richthofens. There was the one in the fire, the one with the bolt hook.
And you might be saying, well, Habibi, that radio is recorded by Nikolai 2.0 of Origins and not Nikolai 1.0. Well, Nikolai 2.0 had just arrived on the Giant for the first time after Origins, so he couldn't have been on the map before to record those radios. But Nikolai 1.0 has, as he was a test subject on the Giant, aka Deriz. The Richthofen that was experimenting with the test subjects is in the Giant's cutscene, as Takio asks Richthofen to go awaken the test subjects that were on the map, and we do know for sure that the Deriz map is where Richthofen experimented with the test subjects, which again would mean that Nikolai 1.0 has been here before to possibly record those radios, as Nikolai 2.0 had just arrived here for the first time, so he couldn't possibly have. But again, I can't be sure, it's just a theory. And more evidence that the original 1.0 characters were possibly dimension hopping, or that there was at least some type of idea of a multiverse back in Black Ops 1 with the 1.0 characters, is that on the Ascension poster, as everyone knows, Richthofen is bald for some reason. Now, from what I've heard, the reason Richthofen is bald in this picture is because he stood next to the beacon for too long, as one of the characters on the Giant says something about staying next to a beacon too long and experiencing hair loss. Now, I don't remember which character said this, but I'm pretty sure it was on the Giant. But we know that in all the other maps, Richthofen is not bald. So what does this mean? Does this mean that a different Richthofen from a different dimension that did stand to the beacon too long had come into the Ascension universe? Or is that inferring that the map Ascension is in a completely different universe itself, in which Richthofen stood next to the beacon for too long, and that's why he is bald, and that's just another pathway of the multiverse that happened? So even for the original 1.0 characters, there's still slight hints of a multiverse, and that the characters might have been dimension hopping. Now, Richthofen being bald is just a small difference in the multiverse that doesn't really make a difference in the storyline, because a difference that makes no difference is no different. And the only reason that Treyarch probably put in that little Easter egg of Richthofen being bald is just to tease the theory of the multiverse, and not to like actually input something into the story that, he got a haircut or something, you know what I mean? Which again opens up the possibility for the original Nikolai 1.0 to have recorded that radio on the Giant where he said he went around killing multiple Richthofens. Now you might be asking, well, what about when Dempsey says,
"So, what's your plan, Doc? You gonna tell us where the hell you've been for the last 2 years?"
And now you might be thinking, well, the Origins crew was on the Giant for the past 2 years, so Nikolai 2.0 could have possibly been the one to record this radio. Well, just because he says where have you been for the past 2 years doesn't mean that they were necessarily on the Giant for the past 2 years, because if they were on the Giant for 2 years, they would have stopped Richthofen before he even got close to quote unleashing the great evil, because Richthofen's been on the Giant doing tests with Dr. Maxis and stuff like that. So if the Origins crew was already on the map for 2 years, they would have stopped him way before he even got the chance to walk up to the teleporter. You know what I mean? But what does that mean though? If the Origins crew weren't on the Giant for 2 years, then that means that they had to be somewhere else in between Origins and the Giant. So where could they have been for 2 years? Maybe Brazil, as Dempsey suggests?
This machine's been everywhere I have. France, Brazil, even the damn moon.
So the whole point of this theory of the Eisendrache, the Giant, and Origins being in the same universe is just to make sense of the three Samanthas all being the same Samantha. This was the only theory that could connect the dots of all three Samanthas that seem like they should be three completely different people, but be the same person. Now, as for the fourth Samantha crying on the Giant when she was just sent to the moon, I have no freaking idea, and that's really weird, and I have no explanation to that. Now, I realize that a lot of the things said in this video will probably not come true in the zombie storyline, as this is a very far-fetched theory, but I wanted to think outside of the box, and it's just some food for thought. And I'm sure if you keep watching this video over and over, you could find a bunch of holes in my theory. But again, that's why it's called a theory. Now, let me leave you with something. If 1.0 Samantha and Origins cutscene House Samantha are the same person because 1.0 Samantha was taken to Agartha, then returned to Maxis as Maxis says on a radio in the Giant and as shown in the Origins cutscene, if they're the same person, then why does one have an American accent and one have a German accent?
You cannot hide in there forever, Edward!
From that day forward, they knew that Samantha would keep them safe. Forever.
Are they really the same person?